From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Terrell podcast, where I share stories, tips, and advice on how to lose all your weight for the last time for the first time. And now in our 6th season, I am taking calls, messages, and questions from champions like yourself to help you in all phases of your weight loss quest. I am Terrell, your host, and I've lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. And if you're looking for theoretical weight loss advice or tips on how to crash diet or advice from people who have never had to lose 100 pounds or more, then you're in the wrong place. Here, you are going to get common sense weight loss advice from a daily practitioner of this stuff. Everything I talk about here is intended to help you lose your weight and keep it off for how long? Say it with me. Forever. Lose weight and keep it off forever. And hey, if you got a question about weight loss or weight maintenance and you would like to have it answered on the Terrell podcast, you can fill out the form in the show notes of the podcast where you can give me a detailed question. And if it works out, I'd love to get you live on the air to the podcast, or you can leave me a voicemail. We'll play it on the air and answer your question. All right, this week we are going to be kicking things off with a voicemail. This voicemail comes from Jessica.
I read a quote today from James Clear that true behavior change is identity change. And that if you don't shift your belief behind the behavior, then you're not really going to keep the change long term. I was just curious on your thoughts about how you shift beliefs, and specific examples of how do you shift your beliefs about the types of foods that you eat or about how you feel about exercise. I'd just be curious to hear your advice on this and some specific examples of changing how you feel about I'm only exercising for weight loss, or I love pizza. I don't want to give it up, and those types of specific examples. Thank you. I appreciate you. I'm a guild member, and I can't wait to hear your response to this. Thank you.
Excellent question, Jessica. Thank you so much for asking that. A lot of really important stuff here to address. I want to talk for a moment about the first part of that question, which is the identity shift. One of my favorite books on identity shifting is a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, and it's written by Maxwell Maltz. You can find, if you want to get a link to that book, I've got an affiliate link at christellcoaching.com. You can click on the My Stuff link, and you can get a direct link to that book. But in there, he talks about an interesting phenomenon that would happen. People would, he's a cosmetic surgeon, and people would come to him hoping that a change in their physical form would result in a change in how they feel about themselves. That's often something that happens with cosmetic surgery. And he would notice that sometimes it'd work and sometimes it wouldn't. And he was fascinated by that. And he began a quest of researching to understand that. And it was a fascinating thing. And it has totally transformed how a lot of us see the world and how we see ourselves. And this book is probably one of the most impactful books I've ever read in my life. It has changed the way I approach myself, the way I approach challenges in my life in so many important ways. But one of the things he opens up with in the beginning of the book is the concept of the self-image. Now, when I was seeking to lose my weight and myself, it's not like I sat down and said, what is my new self-image going to be? I didn't do that consciously, but I did do that. After I lost all my weight, I wanted to understand how was I able to achieve the results that I did, because I wanted to help others get the same results. And I knew mechanically what I was doing. Like, I knew how to lose weight technically. But what I found more interesting was, how was I able to get myself to do it after I had failed to get myself to do it for 20 years? Like, what did I do different this last time? Like, something changed. And if you heard episode 100, where you heard the story of the beginning of my journey, I encourage you to listen to that if you haven't. It was born on the heels of my father's passing, but that shouldn't have been enough. And because the journey took years. I had come to terms with my father's passing before the journey was over. And I've gotten to the end of the journey, and I have maintained my weight now for years. And I'd never done that before. Every time I had stopped losing weight, I always slowly began to gain it back. And to clarify what I mean by maintenance, I mean 5-pound window. I have been between 165 and 170 now for 2 years. So Like that's maintenance, the same weight. I'm not yo-yo dieting. I'm maintaining my weight. And I've been wondering, like, how did I do that? What did I do different this time that I didn't do all the other times? And as I've dove into that research and as I've begun to learn more about it, it is a big part of that was the shift in my personal identity, how I saw myself. In the book Psycho-Cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz uses the example of a C student. If a C student is told they're a C student, they're going to act as if they're a C student. They're not going to act like an A student. If a person sees themselves as a failure type person, they will invariably find ways to fail because that's how they see themselves. One of the things that we've, as people, is you will not, on a long-term basis, act out of alignment with your self-image because that's going to create a state of dissonance, and cognitive dissonance is actually a big part of that. And your mind is going to have to reconcile this difference. Now, the cool thing is if you hang on to the new self-image long enough, eventually you'll just start losing weight because you're not going to want to be wrong. Now, how do you do this? Some of this is sitting down and crafting in your mind what you want to look like. In the very beginning of my journey, and I mean the very beginning, I was doing a practice that I, at the time, didn't understand just how important it was. It was vitally important to my success. I would visualize. Now, I was swimming. Swimming in a pool. I didn't have any of them fancy headphones where you could listen to music while you swam. I actually tried to get a pair and they were terrible later. So I would just often have to sit with my thoughts for 30 minutes in a pool while I swam back and forth. That was really valuable that I had done that. I didn't know that it was valuable at the time, but looking back and understanding and dissecting my success, I've been able to see that that was valuable. As I've talked to other people that are successful, I can see they had their own version of this practice. So it's not like you have to copy this exactly. It's the essence that you need to duplicate and replicate in your life. As I was working out, I would visualize how I wanted to look. Because I'm just swimming, right? I mean, I'm just staring at a line down on the bottom of the pool. Like it's not even like I'm consciously paying attention to much. I'm just trying not to drown because I'm so out of shape. I can barely, do the 3 strokes and breathe. It was awful. But I was thinking I needed something to focus my mind on as I pushed myself. And I discovered as I visualized the end, as I got emotionally invested in that visualization, it motivated me to keep going. And because I felt that motivational feeling from the visualization, I kept doing it. And as I kept doing that visualization, the images in my mind would get clearer. They would have more color. They would have sounds. I could see them in different ways. I would role play them out in different scenarios. One of the stories that I've shared previously, one of the things I would visualize is myself dancing to music. Something where you got some intense music, some EDM style music, and the music's building and building and building and building and building and building and building, and then the beat drops. I was just imagining that in my head, and I was imagining myself being there with all these people and just everybody bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, and then the beat drops, and I just start dancing with everybody else. And I had always been so wildly self-conscious about myself that I didn't dance. But as I always wanted to. I always wanted to go somewhere where I could just dance like that and just cut loose and enjoy myself. I looked at people that could do it with such envy. And I would swim. I would go, if I lost weight, I'd have the confidence to be able to do this. And so as I would swim, I would tell myself, I am doing this so that I can have that moment. I am doing this so that I'll be thinner. And because I'll have accomplished this thing I've wanted to accomplish, I'm going to feel more confident about myself. And when I feel confident about myself, I'm going to want to get out here and dance. And I'm going to get the joy of experiencing that moment. And I would think about this as I swam. There were many other moments I would think about, but that's one that's always stood out to me, one that's hung in my memory. I would imagine how my arms would feel. I would imagine how the clothes would look on me. I couldn't quite see the body exactly. I would try to craft it, but my brain would almost reject if it was too much, if it was too far. Like the body I have now, I would try to see this body, but it was so different from where I was at the time. It was kind of hard for my brain to fully attach to it. But the more I visited it, the more I got emotionally invested in that new image. What began to happen is that image was getting implanted into my subconscious. I was getting, what's the phrase? You know the phrase, my hopes up. I was getting my hopes up. I wanted this visualization to become a reality. I wanted it to become real. And as I kept doing this started changing and altering how I carried myself, how I went through different situations and how I went through different scenarios. It gave me an intense state of desire for the end of this journey. What I was doing is I was cultivating and sharpening my why. Every time I visualized the end, I was making my why just a teeny tiny bit more powerful. And your why is one of the most important parts in identity shift. Your why is what's going to be there to push you when you can't push yourself. Your why is a vital and essential part of this journey. And visualization is one of those powerful tools for creating a powerful why within your mind. So that's one part of identity shift. And by the way, this is a topic I could talk about for days and days. So come join the Guild of Champions if you'd like to learn more about this. I talk about identity shift, and we'll be talking about it even more there. If you're interested in joining the Guild of Champions, you can go to, there's a link to that in the show notes where you can come join us. But let's play your question again, because it was a long question. There was a couple of things in it, and I want to specifically address the second half of the question. So let's listen to the second half, and then we'll address that.
How you shift beliefs, and specific examples of how do you shift your beliefs about the types of foods that you eat or about how you feel about exercise.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. So how do you feel about the types of food that you eat or about exercise? This is where when you're looking at a belief, you don't have just one belief. You have a belief system. You have one belief and around it a whole bunch of beliefs, and they're all interconnected via logic. You have beliefs that back up other beliefs. And so, as an example, I'm going to get a really very simplified version of this. Many people believe I lose weight because I cut out carbs. A lot of people believe that. It's not true in the way that most people think it is. But in their head, their logic goes, well, when I lost weight in the past, I lost weight and I cut out carbs. Ergo, cutting out carbs means I lose weight because the carbs made me lose the weight. And so if I eat carbs, I was eating carbs and I was getting fat. Therefore, eating carbs makes me fat. Sometimes we can fall victim to the phrase, correlation does not equal causation. We see a correlation and we assume causation comes with that. That's by not fully understanding what happened. So one of the best ways right off the bat for shifting a belief is learning how to find truth, learning how to assess knowledge, learning how to question things you already believe and see if it truly holds water. As an example with the carbs thing, if you lost weight by way of cutting out carbs, you didn't lose weight because you cut out carbs. You lost weight because you were in a calorie deficit. The way you achieved your calorie deficit was through the reduction of carbs. You could have achieved that calorie deficit one of a number of different ways. It didn't have to be a reduction in carbs. It could have just been a reduction in all food. Maybe you reduce carbs. Well, somebody else might have lost weight by just reducing fat. Back in the day, a lot of people used to vilify fat and say you can't have fat. Fat makes you fat, and not eating fat makes you thin. It's because fat has a lot of calories in it, just like carbs do. And so some people would lose weight by reducing fat intake, which all that did was reduce caloric intake, and they were in a calorie deficit, and then they lost weight. And then they added it back. They added the calories back into their life, and they gained weight. They were in a caloric surplus. And so, again, this all works the opposite. How did you gain weight? It's not because you ate carbs. It's because you ate in a caloric surplus. And there are lots of different ways that you could arrive at a caloric surplus. Carbs are an easy way to do that, especially if they're simple carbs, because it's a lot of calories in a small form factor. Sugar is very calorie dense in a very small bit of food. So part one of shifting your belief around that is going to be obtaining knowledge that is contradictory to what you currently believe. But this is a hard thing for a lot of people to do. A lot of people come to weight loss with a cup that is full of knowledge, and there's no more room for new information. One of the best things I did on my journey was making this conscious choice. Again, when this is a reflective thing, I didn't understand how important this was in the time. Is I had a conversation with myself and I said, clearly I don't know what I'm doing. Clearly I don't know how to lose weight because it's not been for a lack of effort. If I knew how to do it, I'd have done it by now. I haven't done it by now. So I must not know what I'm doing. Something's missing. And what that was is I was beginning to empty my cup. of knowledge, and just sort of take that cup and tip it over and go, whatever I think I know, let's question it. Everything I think I know, let's go reprove it, re-verify it. And if I can't prove it, then I have to let it go. And if I find something that is contradictory to it, I need to accept it. Many of you are wrong about things that you believe about weight loss and weight management. Not all of it, but some of it. Do you even want to know where you're wrong? Like, a lot of people want to know the things they're missing, but do you want to know? Do you want someone to tell you and show you where you could say, these are all the things I said. These are the 10 things I believe. Would you want someone to come up to you and say, of those 10 things you just listed that you believe, 5 of them are falsehoods? Do you want to listen and hear those? A lot of people would say yes, but the reality is they won't. There's actually a famous quote about this. It's from Orson Scott Card. We question all our beliefs, except for those we truly believe, and those we never think to question. The things you don't even think to question sometimes are the very key to the answers to your riddle of how do I lose weight and keep it off forever. So obtaining new knowledge will be very, very helpful for you in shifting your beliefs around food. Now, there's another part, though, that comes in around food. And actually, you know what? Let's finish the rest of the question, and then we'll get to the second part.
I'd just be curious to hear your advice on this and some specific examples of changing how you feel about I'm only exercising for weight loss, or I love pizza. I don't want to give it up, and those types of specific examples.
Okay, so let's take the exercise as an example. Exercise plays an important role in weight loss. So first, let me just give you the knowledge, and then we'll talk about the shifting the belief. Weight loss is achieved by being in a calorie deficit. Exercise is the smallest contributor to all the variables that cause weight loss. Exercise only equates for 5 to 10% of all calories burned in a day. On a good day, most of y'all, it equates for maybe under 5%. I am an ultramarathon runner. I'm getting ready to run a 50-mile ultramarathon next week. Even my exercise is the smallest percentage of all of my calories out. I run anywhere between 25 and 40 plus miles a week, and it is still the smallest percentage of calories out. Exercise is not the most important. So there's the knowledge for you. Is it important? Does it help? Sure. It is the least important of all the other variables. So if it's the least important variable, then why should we do it? You've got to reframe how you look at exercise. And so a good way you can do this to reframe something is, let's just say right now, here, I'll tell you exactly how I do it. If you were a client, what I would tell you to do is take out a journal and at the top of the page, go 10 reasons why I should exercise. And I would just tell you right away, come up with 10 reasons, and none of them can have to do with weight loss. But come up with 10. Write down what those 10 reasons are. And once you have 10 reasons, right next to each one of them, I want you to write a benefit that comes from that reason, why you would even want that. So let's say, like, I want to exercise because I want to be able to get down on the floor and play with my kids. There you go. There's a reason. What's the benefit of doing that? Well, the benefit of doing it is I'll get to create lasting memories with my children, for myself and for my children, because I was able to play with them. And if I'm able to do that, I could probably go play with them on the playground, and I'd be able to keep up with them and create these beautiful memories that I could look back on for the rest of my life, and they could as well. That's a beautiful benefit. Imagine if you tied working out to that. Reasons come first, answers come second. You start with the reasons. Why would you even want to exercise? And far too often, the only reason we do it is because of weight loss. And that becomes problematic because it's not that helpful for weight loss. I get comments every week on TikTok, on Facebook, where people are saying, hey, Chris, I'm exercising 5 days a week. How come I'm not losing weight? I'm like, because you're literally doing the least impactful thing with the most diligence. You should be doing the most impactful things with the most diligence. And then you mentioned the food and the pizza. It's the same concept, but this one does rely a bit more on learning the science behind food. Now, you don't have to become a dietitian. You don't have to become a nutritionist. This is like, think of it as personal finance. The information is out there. If no one taught you how to manage your finances, you're probably not going to. If no one taught you how to invest for the future, you're probably not going to. This is just simply a knowledge shortage, but it's not some elusive knowledge that only a handful of people. We're not talking string theory here. We're talking just how to eat basically healthy foods and how to eat foods that are not too high in energy. That's it. So the first thing we've got to do right off the bat, old diet culture, old mindsets create wealth or diet wounds. They create these wounds where you were scarred. Like, well, the way I lost weight was by giving up all the foods I love. And that means every time I want to lose weight, I'm going to have to give up the foods I love. And I want to lose weight, but I don't want to give up the foods I love. What do? I feel like I'm at an impasse. It can leave that wound on you that hasn't healed. So we've got to first recognize that you can have any food you want. There are no good foods. There are no bad foods. There is just food. That's it. And eating healthy food does not mean you will lose weight. You can get fat eating healthy food. And becoming thin is done by way of a calorie deficit. That's it. Every single diet is just a different way of having you walk through that door. Now, some people might be like, well, I have PCOS. It's still calorie deficit. Well, I'm eating at a calorie deficit and I'm not losing weight. No, if you're not losing weight, you're not at a calorie deficit. Well, I'm not eating a lot of food. That's right. It's calories in, calories out. Something is messing up the calories out. Well, I have PCOS. That's right. The PCOS is messing up the calories out. You need to address the calories out side of the equation. Everybody wants to lose weight by addressing the food side of the equation. And don't get me wrong, you need to. But that is just one piece of it. That's just one part of the puzzle. You've got to do the other side, the calories outside. Now, if every diet, every single one of them, now here's the belief shift. Here's the belief shift I took. Every diet works off of being in a calorie deficit. So that means as long as I'm in a calorie deficit, I can eat whatever I want. That's it. You notice when we say exercise, you don't have to do a specific exercise. It's just any exercise. When I say go on a walk to burn calories via NEAT movement, I didn't say you have to go on a certain kind of walk or a certain time of day or with the certain types of shoes or with a certain distance or hills or time. It's just go on a walk. Just you find the one that works for you. Sustainability is so important. It's a values thing. Now, again, we can spend many hours on the food thing. So, especially since you're in the guild, you know what? We're going to add a lesson in the guild and really dig into this because I think this is an excellent topic. And I'm going to need a full hour to probably dig in. Actually, not probably, definitely to dig into this one. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this part here with this one, with one final piece, with the identity shift. And this is for all of it. You must disprove the belief. You have to break the logic within your mind. You have to show that something else is possible. The Wright brothers, before those famous 12 seconds occurred at Kitty Hawk, the world was under the assumption that man cannot fly. Man had been trying for a long time. As far as the world was concerned, it was impossible. And then in 12 seconds, just 12 seconds, the entire logic of the world was disproven. We flew. Now, some people are like, well, you only flew for 12 seconds. The Wright brothers looked at it and said, we flew and we managed to keep it in the air for 12 seconds. If I kept it for 12, I'll bet I could do it for 13. And if I do it for 13 seconds, I'll bet I could do it for 15 seconds. And if I do it for 15 seconds, I'll bet I can do it for 2 minutes. And if I can do it for 2 minutes, I'll bet I can fly across the globe. Everything changed because of one 12-second test that disproved the logic. So if you want to prove to yourself that you can lose weight while eating pizza, go do it. Go eat pizza and lose weight. Break the logic in your mind. Take the excuse off the table, because then whenever your mind brings up the old thought pattern, and it will, of I can't lose weight by eating pizza. Pizza's going to make me fat. Pizza's no good. When these old thoughts creep back into your brain, because they're your habitual thought patterns, you can then consciously recall the memory of, well, wait a minute, brain. You remember last month where we set aside our calories and we worked in 1,500 calories of pizza and we ate it and we went on to lose weight that week? You remember that, brain? Do you remember that, brain? And your brain's like, Yeah, but pizza makes me fat. And you're like, no, brain, we lost weight here. Explain this to me, brain. This is going to create this sense of dissonance within your mind. Now, this part is where you got to really work through it. So the more evidence you can accumulate within your mind against the old belief, it will eventually shatter and crush the old belief, and it won't be able to stay in your mind anymore. You'll have to let it go. So go disprove it. Get knowledge, and then go apply the new knowledge and break the old belief. Excellent question, Jessica. Thank you so much for asking that. Everybody else, if you would love to have your question answered on the podcast, in the show notes, you can submit it via written, or you can leave me a voicemail and we'll do what we did here and have it read on the air. I am working on the technical parts. I would love to get live callers. So if you want to do a live caller, that's what the written one is for. But if you just want to go have your question answered, go ahead and get to it and ask it that way. And we'll feature you on a later episode of the Chris Terrell podcast. So glad you're here. Can't wait to see you next week on the podcast. Go crush a belief this week. Like crush it with new evidence. Go take a belief that you've been holding on to about weight loss. Something that I say, something that others say that your brain just rejects it, says this can't be possible, this can't be true. Go find that thing and then disprove it. My weight loss journey is riddled with these stories. I mean, just absolutely riddled with these stories of where I believed one thing and then acted as if it were not true. I'm going to tell you about the very first month of my journey. The very, very first month. In the first month of my journey, I decided I'm not tracking anything. I didn't know about calories, so it would have been carbs. I'm just going to move more and eat less. That's it. Move more, eat less. Nothing more, no fancy, no little tricksy things. I'm not going to get cutesy with my weight loss. Just move more than I am on normal and eat less than I do normally. And I also decided I'm not going to weigh in because I believed in the past that I had to weigh in all the time. I believed in the past that if I didn't have the scale, I wouldn't keep going. I believed in the past that I had to cut out carbs or I wouldn't lose weight. I believed in the past I had to kill myself working out. It couldn't be just a little bit of working out. It had to be a stupid amount of workout, and I had to hurt. I almost couldn't even sit. I believed that. And then a month into my journey, I get on the scale. I hadn't been on it in a month, and I lost weight. And my brain is like, we just lost weight. We just lost weight. And we didn't track anything. Explain that to me, brain. And my brain's like, well, I don't know. Brain, we just lost weight and we didn't do anything that crazy in the gym. 3 or 4 times a week for 20, 30 minutes. That's it. And it was actually fun. We just lost weight doing that. I don't know. Brain, we didn't get on the scale for a whole month and we never quit. We kept going. Here we are. I'm just as excited and motivated as ever. And it had not a damn thing to do with the scale. Explain that to me, brain. And brain's like, I don't know. Brain is clueless. That clueless feeling I discovered is exactly the place I want to sit. I want to be right there in that clueless feeling where I don't have a clue. Because that means I have an empty cup. It means I get to learn more. I'm getting these new experiences. The answer to my weight loss success lied in my own ignorance, in the areas of knowledge that I didn't even possess. I had to begin seeking these vistas of knowledge that I had never gazed upon and go, I don't know any of this. I wonder if some of my answers lie here. Oh, I used to believe this and now I believe that, and I got new results. Find a belief that you hold. Challenge it. You'll be amazed at what happens in your life as you do that. This is the Chris Terrell Podcast. Look forward to talking to you next week. See you then.